My name is Sanya Granani. I am one of the co-founders of Radius Agent. I welcomed you all to the summit a little bit an hour ago. And now we are on to the next session, which is how to close 100 homes a year. I'm going to start by introducing our panelists one by one. I will be the moderator for this session. Let's start with Rebecca. Rebecca is an agent out of Arizona. All three of these agents have closed over 100 deals this past year, and I'll let Rebecca introduce herself.
Hi, I'm Rebecca Hidalgo Rains. I'm with Berkshire Hathaway here in Chandler, Arizona. I have been licensed since 1993 and have been selling homes full-time ever since. So I have 28 years in the business, and last year my team sold 250 homes for 100 million in production.
Love it. That's incredible, Rebecca. You're such an inspiration.
Thank you.
Rosie, let's go with you now. Tell us about you, where you're from, what your deal flow was last year.
Hi, I'm Rosie Gonzalez from Coldwell Banker, and my office is in Chicago, in one of the western suburbs, in LaGrange, Illinois. My team is basically my husband, who's also a real estate agent, and I have an assistant and an awesome support from Coldwell Banker. We closed over 100 deals in 2019 and 2020. And we love it. I've been doing this for 15 years. It's going to be 15 years in November.
Love it. Marcus, let's go with you. Everyone's going to see Marcus's amazing background soon.
Hi, Marcus Valdez. I'm in Fort Collins, Colorado, but I have a team of 12 brokers, and we go all the way from Denver, even Colorado Springs, up to Cheyenne, Wyoming, but not in Wyoming yet.
All right. Well, I am so thrilled to be having this conversation with you guys. You've clearly built these enormous businesses. And we all know how hard it is to be an entrepreneur, to just start and to scale it to the extent that you have is pretty incredible. So I have a question for each of you. How did this journey go from 0 to 100 to in some cases 250? Like, was it specific partnerships? Was it, was it a strategy decision? Was it taking on a team? So tell me a little bit more about that 0 to 100. Rosie, I'm going to start with you.
Okay. It made it very not easy. I mean, it was gradually. The first year, what I actually worked on was on my sphere of influence. I got 2 listings on one street, and everybody was talking about Rosie. Oh my gosh, you're so busy and you have so many listings. And I'm like, really? I only have 2 on the same block. But so then I focused from there on. I picked my neighborhood, and since then I only network heavily, and I spend a lot of money just in my hometown. So you really have to be very, very focused. Just whatever fits well for you, that's where you should just stick with it. And that's what I did. In 3 years, I pretty much took over my market. 3 years.
Love it. Yeah, and that's not a lot of time at all. So I think being specific in the market that you are focused on is clearly important. Marcus, what about you?
Yeah, I love what Rosie said. I think focusing on what you do well is a big part of the success that you're going to have as a broker. There's a ton of ways to get to that number. And I think you're also going to have to be a chameleon, just like this market has changed with COVID. I think that there's a lot of things that as different trends hit the market, as different market situations hit the market, you're going to have to adapt to those things and find ways to overcome challenges.
Nice. What about you, Rebecca?
Well, I absolutely concur with what both of them had said. To piggyback, I love farming. I've done farming before. But what I think the biggest key to my success in these 28 years is we all know the market's very cyclical, and everything's changing. And I really think that diversifying and studying the market, like I purport how geeky and nerdy I am and how much I love spreadsheets, and I do. Because the more you get educated yourself, the more you can educate others. And I really do think that's been part of my success hugely. But then the other part is dare to fail. Don't be afraid to give it your all. And I think when I look back and over the years on how my team has grown and developed, I think hiring my first admin full time, not just as a transaction coordinator per deal, but actually like being responsible for somebody else's full income and livelihood is what made me understand the power of being leveraged. And there's no way any one person can do 250 deals. In fact, there were quite a few of us who worked at getting that 250 deals. And today my husband and I have 3 full-time admins that are licensed, but we didn't have them all at the same time. It takes time to grow to that pace. And I think that the only way you're ever going to get to 100 is with help. So don't be afraid to pay for help, invest in help, develop help, train help. All 3 of mine came to me unlicensed at like literally pennies per hour. And then I incentivized them to grow with me, and they have.
Yeah, it's interesting what you said. I think people don't realize that sometimes the cost of it, even if it's pennies, seems like a lot, but the cost of it sometimes has to be before you actually start seeing the revenue for it, right?
Oh, absolutely. And that's the scary part, I think, where a lot of agents feel like they can do it all themselves. And I was a great solo agent, but there was only so much I can do by myself. And I think the average agent, you said, does about 16 deals a year. That's totally feasible to do by yourself, 24, maybe 35 with the TC. But after that, you've got to expand.
Yeah, for sure. So I know some of you talked about how the market has so drastically changed from the last year when we were talking earlier. And that some of what you're doing is saying that you have to roll with the punches. Things will change, things will adjust. So tell me, Marcus, let's start with you. Like what was the change this past year? COVID happened, and like, how did that reflect in your business? And how did the last 12 months go because of it?
Yeah, thank you. I feel like one of the big things that's changed in our market particularly, and probably most markets around the country, is we just have no inventory right now. And so there are a ton of buyers in the market, but there's not as many sellers. And that has been super challenging because in the past, most of the deals that we did, we tried to have about a 50-50 mix in sellers versus buyers. And right now there's so few sellers, even across just our whole city. I live in Fort Collins, Colorado, and we have about 120,000 people here.
Yeah.
The average home is about $400,000. And I think I checked yesterday, there were about 16 homes, half of which were not built, 2 of which were rentals. So if you needed to buy today, there were 8 homes.
Yeah,
So, rolling with those punches, changing with it, I think that's going to be a huge part of this next year. And part of that's COVID related.
Yeah. And would you agree with that, Rosie? Has that been, I know you talked about something similar in your market as well.
Oh, yes. I just did a video yesterday, teaching my sellers that this is a good market. And, when I deal with older people, and most of my clients in my hometown, it's an old town, LaGrange, Brookfield, there are a lot of older people. They're scared. And so we need to teach these people that it's okay to sell your house. It's okay. You're going to get a lot of money. This is the time. If people were on the fence last year, they should definitely sell, and you have to call those people. I've been on the phone like never before. I hate calling people. I never had to do it. People always call me, and it was great. But now I have to call them and educate them and tell them, because the news is not teaching sellers. The news is only taking the space for COVID and how horrible it is. And I have taken evenings and calling people until 9 p.m. And I have gotten listings just because of those phone calls. People, they were afraid of opening the doors. They're moving to their parents' house. They're moving to their sister's house, and they're putting their houses on the market. And I tell them, we take a lot of precautions. So there's a lot of hand holding more than ever before. So that's part of what we have to do now, be out of your comfort zone, which I'm totally doing something that I hate to do, but it's working, and I got to make it work. I have to make it work. And I got 3 listings from calling people, so that's pretty good.
That is. Rebecca, I know you talked about how your business has been a combination of online leads, partnerships, referrals. Tell us how that whole combination has been forced to shift or is shifting because of this transition this past year?
Well, if it's okay, I want to give kudos to Rosie, because I hate making calls too, and she's inspired me to do it. That said, last year with COVID, I had to get good and teach my agents how to get good at doing Zoom. I was actually doing webinars and literally open houses on Zoom. And that technology has been something that we've had to adapt to. I've sold a lot of homes virtually where the people never even saw it till they were getting their keys. My marketplace is a little bit different, being that we have almost 5 million people in the Phoenix metro area. So we do have a shortage of inventory. Don't get me wrong. We're literally down to like a fourth or a fifth of what we had just last year as far as active homes go. So what I had shared earlier about diversifying my business model, because I've been a broker, I'm not just a sales agent. I got licensed to be a broker in '98. So I have agents under me that are full-time independent agents who pay me a monthly fee. I have agents who work for me on my builder account, and the builder account's been great because it's definitely doesn't ebb and flow at the same time of year as resale does. And then with resale, we have Zillow is one of our bigger accounts. We do a couple of other online services, and that obviously feeds us buyer leads. But I think we're all scrapping for seller leads today, and that is definitely the name of the game. And I'm going to start getting on the phones tonight like Rosie and see what I can do to get some of my sellers off the fence.
Rosie, inspiring people.
Hey, you got to do what it takes.
Yeah. And so, Rosie, let's dig into that a little bit. Clearly, every agent in your market wants these listings, right? It is competitive. It is, it's if there's everybody has so many buyers, and people need the listings. You talked about calling people. Is there anything else you're having to do to stand out? Whether it's the tech or talk to me a little bit more about, like, outside of calling folks and suggesting that they should move out. And leverage family, anything else that you're having to do to actually stand out from the competition?
Well, yes, during COVID, I became very creative. Okay. And I'm the worst person in be creative with my hands doing cards. I'm not handy. I can sell anything, but I was so creative. And I actually, I spend a lot of money without COVID. We network. I take my clients out. I throw the best parties. Around Thanksgiving, we have like 4 big activities in the community, and we're like in the parade, and we didn't have any of it. So I'm thinking, okay, we didn't spend all the money. I need to do something.
Right.
So I was delivering packages for Valentine's Day for my clients, and we had a snowstorm, and the crazy Rosie was with her mink getting off the car, and my clients absolutely loved it. And these cookies are very, very special. It's from a Mexican store way on the 26th Street, the Mexican neighborhood, and very special. They have been there for like 40 years. I order a bunch of boxes, I deliver them, and it was all over Facebook. Oh my gosh, my realtor. And so you really have to be out of the box and be very, very creative. So the cookies for Thanksgiving was total
cookies.
Success. Yes. Cookies. And I also took the time to check on my clients, because I don't see them like I normally do, in my backyard and drinking wine. I have a list of A+ clients. They're like my billboards who are always referring me business. So I make sure they were, okay, and we still got together with mask, and you just have to show your face out there and let them know that you're still doing business and it's okay to sell your house. So I did things that I never had to do before, because we tend to get very comfortable and everything comes to you after you build a brand, but it wasn't happening during COVID. So it doesn't matter who you are, how successful you are, and how well-known people know about your business, you have to reach out. And I never had to do that. So I think I did pretty good in 2020. And this was just a good lesson to learn, because a few of the things we're going to continue to do this year, and even without COVID.
Yeah, I think one of the things that you mentioned about how it got broadcasted on social media, I think that's the other bit that we underestimate is like now that people are spending a lot more time at home, like social media metrics, if you see it, like people are spending a lot more hours on social media. So like, what are some things that you can do that actually get broadcasted, right? Like not, you probably gave it to 10 clients, but then they put it on their social and those, and those reached a lot more. So I think it's the online aspect of what you did is also incredibly important. Amazing. Okay, so I have all of these questions coming in, but I have some questions I want to get through. So I'll move on to the next one. Marcus, this is for you. The fact that there are so many buyers in the market means that some of them are not going to get their homes, right? Most of them are not, considering the competition. And especially with our NAHREP community, and they are disenfranchised in some ways to be able to get the same kind of loans that would make them stand out, have the all cash offers that would make them stand out. So how do we deal with this? Like, how do you keep these buyers engaged and educated so that, okay, maybe today they don't find a home, but you're still the person they come to further down the line?
Yeah, thank you. And I think this kind of goes into one of the questions Rick had in the chat, but it's really difficult right now. I think the best thing you can do is just try to educate that buyer on what the market situation is, because if they're not able to put down a large amount of money, they're probably going to fail regardless.
Mm-hmm.
If I were a seller, and if anyone else was a seller, if you put on your seller hat, you want the most money with the least hoops to jump through. So if they're going to remove their appraisal, if they're going to remove their inspection, and they're going to pay cash, that's the offer you kind of want. And if you're working with a buyer who's a first-time buyer, they can only put 5% down, they need closing costs. And I think that's sort of what you're getting at with some of the people who are in the community and maybe don't have the finances to compete at that level. I think you just need to be able to explain to them, hey, I would love to work with you. I'll continue to help you the best I can. But this market right now is probably not one we're going to succeed at. But I also think if you can embrace that as an opportunity, then you can go out and walk that neighborhood and try to find something that's off market that you don't have to compete on. One of the things that my team, I think, does really well is that we have a database of the last 2 years of expired listings. And so we can look back in that database and try to find a match for someone, maybe approach someone. So I think you just have to think outside of the box and get maybe a little bit more creative and more focused on what would be a good way to approach the problem.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. One of the things that Rick mentioned was, having to actually go and check on their mental health. Like it's extremely exhausting for buyers to be in this position where they really want some. We've all been through this. Like we want something, we know our next step, but you're just in limbo because there's just nothing you can do in a market like this. I just have a follow-up question to that. Is some of what you're doing also explaining to them that they need to lower their expectations? Like, does that help at all? Telling buyers that, okay, you want a 3-bedroom, but if this is the budget, this is, go for these 2 bedrooms or go for these smaller houses.
I think if they can do that, that would be fantastic. And I think if you can explain to them that this might be where they need to start. I explain a lot of times to buyers that real estate is like a tree. It would have been great to plant one 50 years ago, but the next best time is probably today because it's going to continue to grow. It's going to continue to earn you money. It's going to continue to be a fantastic investment. And so I would encourage them, if they could get into something that's not their perfect thing, to explore that flexibility.
Okay. Rebecca, the question I have for you is, I know we've talked about these interest rates, and the interest rates being lower has somewhat contributed to how many buyers there are in the market. With interest rates now rising, one, what's your perspective? Do you think they're going to continue rising? And then second, how does that change this market now?
Well, first off, Marcus, thank you for the question. And Marcus, I love the tree analogy. I'm so stealing that. So you and Rosie are totally blowing me some great ideas my way. That said, it's interesting. I was actually hiking this morning with a girlfriend of mine who's one of the top lenders here in the Valley. And literally she's looking at her phone as we're coming off the mountain this morning. And she's like, oh my gosh, crap. And she's like doing this. I'm like, what? And rates worsened as of this morning. So I do believe, they were low, maybe fictitiously before the election, and they only have one place to go. Now, that's not a bad thing, because I do believe, I personally have a stable of sellers that the minute they feel like they have eclipsed or hit the max of what they could possibly get for their home. So if there's just a little bit of a flat line, just a little bit of a slowdown, just a little bit of, oh my gosh, instead of 20 offers, they're only getting 3 the first day. That might not be a bad thing if rates continue to inch up. So to give perspective for those of you who, don't get to hear from your lender every day what the rates are, last week they were still at 2 3/4, at least here locally. And as of last night, they were at 3 1/8. And I have no idea where they landed this morning. Obviously, it's volatile. The bond market has definitely been suffering. I personally believe there's only one place they can go, and it's not going to be the end of the world, in my opinion, because it may get some people off the fence. The rates haven't really drastically changed in 10 months. So to see some shift may mix things up a bit. Maybe some people might get priced out of the market a little bit, because that, maybe if it goes up a half a point, it could make a big difference for what they can qualify for. But if it slows down at all, we may get more inventory. If we get more inventory, then we can still service those same buyers. Obviously, I don't want them to hit 5 or 6. But 3 years ago, when they were at 5, we had a ton more inventory to sell. And so I don't know that it'd be a scary thing if they go into the 4s. It's just scary if all of a sudden then it prices your clients out who have watched the prices go up. So that's kind of where that whole tree analogy goes with Marcus. Plant that tree, because the cost of money could be going up even if the prices don't continue to go up at the rate they did last year.
Right, absolutely. And then I guess the question I have for all of you is, you've talked about how you're kind of adjusting with the market. You've talked about how, it's taken you time to get to this stage. My next question is, if most realtors, if you look at average number of sales, it's actually very low. And then, the ones that are considered successful are the ones that end up doing over 12, 15 sales a year. And then there's the top, like you guys. What recommendations do you have for people that are in that 10 to 20 range, or maybe even starting out, to kind of make that leap? Like, what do we do now to scale? I know we've talked about adding team members, adding admin. Any other specific advice that comes to mind that would be important for them? Rebecca, let's start with you.
Okay, so my number one advice is you get what you give. A lot of agents can become complacent when they're solo agents, and most of us don't like doing like admin type work. So I'm definitely a big proponent on getting that help at the office for things you don't like doing. My number one thing that is huge for us, I'm a lot like Rosie, where we do client appreciation parties. We're always staying in touch. I do a lot of video. And if my database were not robust with a ton of information, and every time we get a new lead, we source where it came from and all of that, you got to be diligent with your CRM. I don't care what CRM you use, just use one and use it. Stay in touch. That's key, in my opinion.
Yeah, I've heard that. It's like the best. People ask a lot, like, which CRM do you use? The best CRM you use is the one you use, right? Like,
that you actually use. Yeah. I mean, most of them these days are tied to social media. You can start stalking people all kinds of fancy ways. But you just got to use one. And majority of agents I know don't use one. Yeah. But we have for many years, and now we've got several thousand people in it, and that is definitely makes a big difference.
Yeah, for sure. Rosie, what about you?
Well, I would recommend to, start with the fundamentals. When I first started, I didn't know what I was doing, obviously. As a new agent, brand new, I was always good in sales, but the fundamentals is you have to become the expert. And you cannot fake to be an expert. You really have to show it. And people will pick you because you're so educated, like you can never stop learning. I'm always learning. My husband makes fun of me. Like I'm sitting in front of the TV and he's like, really? I'm watching how to be a successful agent in an open house. He's like, really? You're doing that? So you really have to not stop learning. And you can show it. You can show it, you know, and there's so many fundamentals. I mean, when I first started, I networked. I went to every party that I was invited to. My budget was 150 every time I went to a jewelry party. I always had my name tag. I walked into these parties. I'm like faking, oh my gosh, I was working. I was showing houses. Oh, let me take my name tag and put it on the site. Now you know I sell houses. So you gotta have to be very creative and let people know what you're doing, and you're selling houses, you're very successful. Don't be a secret agent. Carry your business cards all the time at Jewels, at Aldi's, at the thrift store, anywhere you go. You have to let people know what you do, and then they're gonna recognize you when they see your face. Just try to get one listing in your neighborhood. That's all it takes. One or two, that will be great. But of course, I'm a listing agent. You can always do that with buyers, but you know, the recognition is different when you're a listing agent. So doing a lot of the fundamentals from like walking on the street, you know, now I don't host many open houses because everything is selling in one day.
Yeah.
But, and these 3 houses that I'm gonna put on the market, deliver some information on the street about you. Invite the neighbors and just be out of the box, be different. And people will remember that, because most people that come to open houses are looking for an agent. And even if you don't, you know, if you're not the expert yet, just because they see you working, that's good enough.
Yeah.
So start, you know, just be out there, carry your business cards and tell people what you do.
Yeah, I think that's such good advice. I mean, the whole bit about going to a party and pretending you had it on by mistake, I think it's, you know, you can't really walk in with name pins otherwise. It's pretty good. Okay, Marcus, what about you?
Well, one thing I tell my team a lot is try to make every deal 3 deals. So whenever we have an opportunity, and this is something that Mark was just saying in the chat that I appreciate, we have, like, if you have a seller or you even have a buyer and they're like, well, I would buy if I would get out of my lease. Then I think if you can think creatively and say, well, maybe I should talk to that landlord and see if I can get this tenant out of the lease. And if that landlord maybe he wants to buy a new rental, maybe that landlord wants to sell the rental the tenant's in. I always try to think of, how do I turn it into more than just one deal by communicating and by climbing up that ladder a little bit to see what other things exist on it.
Got it. Yeah, all good advice. I think, and if I have to summarize that, it's, you know, keep yourself organized, keep being creative, and, you know, be opportunistic. Like there's not one, there's multiple in every deal. So that was awesome. I have one last question, and then I'm going to open it up to the audience. There's already so many questions coming in, so I don't want to keep you guys too long. But one thing that we're asking every single panelist today is, this past year has been rough. It's been a change. It's you know, it's challenged all of us. What is the silver lining? Like, what is the silver lining for each of you? Things that, you know, happened and now you continue doing, and things you're grateful for. So Marcus, let's start with you.
I think this year the silver lining is just that there's a lot of people who need help. And I really loved what Rebecca said about how much can you give. I think if you look at a lot of opportunities, like The Go Giver is a fantastic book, How to Win Friends and Influence People. Those are fantastic ways to understand the psychological effects of when people are making a difficult financial decision. And I get more joy out of helping those people than I ever get out of receiving a commission check. So I think the more you can become ingrained in that. One thing I really wanted to say, and I apologize for not saying it earlier, is when you asked about people moving from 20 deals to 30 deals or 40 deals, I like to try to back into those numbers for myself. So I just say, well, if 30 deals means I need to do 2.5 or 3 a month, then what activities do I need to do on a weekly basis to get so I could do 3 deals in that month? And I think that really helps me personally, is to try to make it as small as I can. And then the other thing I really try to focus on is just being engaged in the activity, because I can't control the outcome. I can only control the activity. So if I need to make 50 calls to get those appointments, I try not to think, well, on those 50 calls, did I actually get an appointment? I just try to really embrace the activity. And I know that the results will come as residual effect of doing the activity with my heart.
And you encourage your team to do the same, so it all trickles down.
I'm just learning from them. They're fantastic. So if I can surround myself with people like them, it gives me a better opportunity. They certainly have a leader who's not as good as what they're offering, I think.
I'm sure that's not true. Rosie, Rosie, what's your silver lining?
Well, doing a lot of interaction virtually, I love it. I think it was a lot easier to do presentations, market analysis and conference with the husband and the wife. It was fantastic. I actually love it more than having people in my conference room. So I will continue to do that. Attending closings, now we have the biggest excuse. They don't want you there. I can't go to the closing. It's great. What a waste of time. So I will continue to do that also. I'm not going to go to closings anymore. That's great. It's not necessary. And just it forced us to be very creative. And so I don't think it was bad, yes, because of COVID, but we all learned so much from this, and we really got to appreciate what it's important. So it was an okay year for us. I mean, a really good year. And we will continue to use those, places that we had to use because of COVID. And it was a blessing because all of these virtual meetings and market analysis, I don't think I had any of them that wanted a second opinion or anything. It was done. Immediately send the listing agreement and ready to sign. So it's been a great lesson to learn to do everything. And I was totally against doing anything virtually because I like to see people's faces. But I changed now.
You're getting a lot of responses saying, we love closings. I attend my closings.
No.
Okay, each to its own, right? Everybody has different things that they enjoy about the business. Rebecca, what about you?
Well, first off, I want to say I completely agree with both Rosie and Marcus, and I love Marcus's humble vibe because there's a couple here who've been doing real estate for, I don't know, 100 years, and they wrote a book called Clients First, and I had an opportunity to do a transaction with them, and from every step, I loved every person that I interacted with on their team, and they just have that culture that they've developed on their team, and I have a feeling Marcus does the same. So to be able to come into it with what can I do to help is huge. Mm-hmm. The virtual meetings I've gotten really good at, like Rosie, and I love that I can share my screen, show how I come up with saved searches, show how I come up with comps, show how I can do everything. And I will absolutely continue to do that. It's been such a time saver, both on buyer consults up front before we get into the car so I can educate them properly. And then of course at the listing stage, I've been able to do some great virtual meetings, sharing my screen, setting them up, and that's been awesome. I will continue to do that. And like Rosie, I'm probably not going to be going to any more signings because it's really nice and the title company just sends the notary to people's houses and I don't need to be there. Seriously, all of the above. But I think the biggest silver lining is, again, after 28 years of doing this, and I have to agree 1,000% with the sentiment that you are always learning from every deal you do and every market condition we're in. And you just have to make sure you're studying your local stats, you're studying everything. For me, I was doing a radio show weekly before COVID, and COVID forced me to switch it to podcast and on video, which I'm going to continue to do. And that's been really huge. I use my podcast platform and share it with my database for education purposes. And it's really added a lot of, I don't know what the word I'm looking for right now, but my clients actually seem to think I know what I'm talking about, which is fantastic. So I will continue to go video podcast versus the radio station, forever and ever, as long as I continue to do my show.
Awesome. Okay, I have time for one question. If you haven't already, please chat it in. And then I'm going to introduce Craig Carley, who's our Director of Sales. He's going to talk a little bit about one of our products, Radius Assist, for a minute. and then we are going to announce the giveaway winner. So 4 minutes left in this session. That is the plan. Please put in your questions if you have not already. Rebecca, what's your podcast name? Can you share that out?
I just typed it out. It's gratefulheart.tv. We're on all platforms, video and on audio.
All right, so this question came in on Q&A, and Marcus somewhat answered this already. Do you buy leads, Zillow, Boomtime, etc.? Marcus said, you know, he tries it out for 3 months and play red light, green light on it. If it hasn't paid, he stops. I'm going to give you a chance, Rebecca, to answer that. Do you buy leads, and you know, what's your conversion strategy?
So we are currently on the Zillow Flex program. We used to pay for one zip code, and it probably paid for itself. It wasn't very exciting. But this last year, my team's really sunk their teeth into that program. So while we don't pay monthly, we pay a referral fee, and that's what a lot of the online platforms have gone to. And honestly, we can't complain, because it kind of going back to what Marcus had said of turning one deal into 3 deals. Yeah, that one deal feels expensive. Zillow's charging 35%, but if we get a sister or a brother, a family member, a friend, or repeat business, we don't have to pay on those. So it's definitely worth it, in my opinion. It's just really hard to quantify the ROI on that.
Yeah. Well, I think this is the exact right opportunity to bring Craig on, because he can talk about how our business does help with Zillow Flex and a lot of these online leads. Before Craig starts, I did want to thank all of you so much. This was such an engaging session. Please stick around, but you know, very thankful for all the learnings. Even being an entrepreneur that's not a real estate agent, I learned so much on how to approach our business. So I can't even imagine what the agents, you know, that have been here have been inspired by. So Craig, why don't you go ahead and introduce Radius Assist, and then we're going to announce our giveaway winner.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for everyone for coming here today. So our Radius Assist product, what we do is we are an ISA lead qualification tool. So we are going to call, text, and email your leads in an attempt to get a responsive buyer or seller and set you appointments that are well worth your time. You know, following up takes a lot of time. You know, you guys already have a lot on your plate. We provide a service that allows you to focus on the people that are most interested in working with you. And a little bit about us, we are a Colorado-based concierge program. We work from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Mountain Time. And we not only take on the leads that you're purchasing through companies like Zillow or other third-party sources, we also revive your old leads as well. So any of your bulk database leads that you haven't talked to in a while, or have kind of gone unresponsive or fallen through the cracks, we try to revive those leads as well. One of the best aspects about us is we are customizable to you and your brand. So the SMSs that we send out for you, you get to kind of decide what you want those to say. And with the big focus on building your brand as an agent, and we give you full transparency into the platform. You can see the calls that we made out. You can see the text that we send. You can also have a recording of the qualification to better suit you for that first appointment. With that, we will put our consultation link in the chat. Feel free to schedule any time with us. We'd love to hear more about your business and if we could be a good resource for you. And with that, we will get to our 1 month winner. So 1 month of assist, the winner is, oh, did it go back? Let me, just a second. Let me get that updated. We will get in contact with the winner here shortly. We'll get in contact with you and we will send you the information on how to get started through the consultation program, and we will reach out in the very near future.
The winner is Tanya Southern Morgan.
Okay, Tanya Southern Morgan. We will get in touch with you very soon and get you set up. Congratulations.